On the move. Okay, here we go. I want to talk a little bit about Webster Colcord. Badass in his own right. He's been kind of holding the torch for what it looks like to operate at the highest levels and remain independent. Here's a guy that cranks out a music video, works for the likes of Phil Tippett on the one hand, and then will be the animation supervisor on a movie like Minority Report, say. Here's a guy that has done from top to bottom, stern to stem, every kind of animation work you can imagine, from high-end CG work at that sort of ILM caliber for big giant effects movies to commercials and television. He can do 2D, 3D, stop-mo, you name it. He can draw, he can paint, he can sculpt, he can animate. I'm not sure if he worked at Pixar. He may have avoided that scene. I think he worked at the orphanage in ILM. But he's got his startup in Portland, I believe, working at the original Will Vinton Studios. He was like one of the youngest people they hired, and he could do the clay work. And I think some of the best stop motion animators got their start there, because I would say that style of claymation is definitely one of the hardest things you can possibly do. He was working alongside, I don't know, Jeff Mulcaster and Gerald Howard and John Ashley, and he's just like, there was a Studley crew up there, Chuck Duke, of really great animators and sculptors and builders and fabricators. And but he was indie, and so he could kind of do, I think he branched off and got repped and started just directing his own commercials. I remember early in the 90s, God, it must have been super early 90s, like 93 maybe, he did a series of Converse ads, and they were so radical. They were 2D and stop motion. And he just had this punk style. He had this great sketchy drawing style. And I remember, this is back in the day when Spike and Mike's Animation Festival was huge. We didn't have the internet, so it was like, you want to see some interesting animation, you go to this festival that would tour. It definitely toured the United States. I think it toured the whole world. And all these eclectic kind of trippy indie animators would show their films in this big giant festival. And you had like Bill Plimpton and Brothers Quay, Jan Schwenkmeyer and shit. I forget who directed. There's this great stop motion film called Balance. I remember seeing that film and just being so blown away. There was a multimedia feel to it. Like, you could tell that he could kind of move fluidly from 2D into stop motion and back. It was, the compositing technology was really early. So it was like, artists were working under the camera instead of, like registered drawings on a Oxberry. He would, like his pages would like wrinkle and tear, and, he would do stuff on 4s that was all like crayons or fucking color pencils. It just felt very multimedia, and you saw more multimedia happening kind of in Europe, where the commercials were more avant-garde, more eclectic, more different, more daring and bold, and less constricted into categories. It wasn't like, okay, you stay in your lane, you're 2D, so you're going to do a 2D film, or you're going to do a 2D commercial. It was like, no, we're going to do a little live action, a little puppeteering, a little stop-mo, a little 2D, and maybe some, early wireframe 3D. Like, the 3D was so, like, Paleolithic at this point. But Webster kind of just had this fun, loose, kind of Spike and Mike style. Like, it fit right in with a sick and twisted mentality. It was like, he would do stuff with, like, zombies were a recurring theme with him. He had this, like, kind of superhero character that was dressed in kind of like a yellow unitard, and he would do these, like, radical run cycles that just look like fisheye lenses, where he's, like, running towards you. That's what... Okay, so these impressions are so fucking lame. I mean, I should just look them up so I know exactly all the things I'm referring to. I know he directed a pilot about it was a stop motion pilot, and he pitched it around all the networks, and it was such a shame it didn't get picked up. My God, it was so well conceived and designed, and it was a couple of kids that would drive around a big giant robot. I think it was called Giant Robot or something, or something robot. And a kid would, summon a huge robot and then climb up into the, like, helmet of the robot with another, like, a little boy and a little girl would get in there, and then they would start scratching records to operate this big, huge mech suit robot. And it was like, fuck yes. It's like, how cool is that? If, you're pitching a pilot about some kind of supersonic superhero team that fights monsters with a huge robot that they drive and operate with headphones and a fucking turntable. It's like, how fucking dope is that, And the puppets were so killer. I remember Anthony Scott did a couple shots for it, and just thinking, oh my God, this thing is so tight, so cool, so cutting edge, so well designed. Of course it doesn't get picked up, because it's too on the nose cool for network executives to handle. They don't know what to do with that much flavor. But he's just always active. He's always doing stuff. He can work in clay. I saw him do a whole music video for, I think it was, what's his name, the bassist from Primus, Les Claypool. I think it was a Les Claypool video, all clay. And he moves his environments to create the illusion of a big giant camera move. He came into Shadow Machine. He was like, I'm just doing this music video on my off time. It was like, he had this tiny stage, and he is so unassuming. He comes in, he just does this thing, and it just like blows doors on everybody. And it, we're all these heady fucking wannabes, and he just throws down, and it was just so refreshing to see that, It was such a kick in the pants. It was like, he came in with a lump of clay and a camera and a couple lights. He cranked out some magic for a dope client, Les Claypool. Like, come on. I remember Mike Johnson doing a Les Claypool music video, or I guess he convinced Primus to record Devil Went Down to Georgia, because I think Sailing the Seas of Cheese, I think Stephen Buckley, knew Les Claypool and had, I think, even directed a Primus music video. And so he was like, yeah, I'll ask Les if he can record Devil Went Down to Georgia, because Mike Johnson wanted to do a short film with that as the song. So instead of, the band hiring Mike to direct their video, Mike was like, I'm doing a video, can you record the song and do the soundtrack to it? Pretty sure how that went. But it's funny how certain directors, or certain musicians, get drawn into the whole stop motion web. Speaking of Webster. It's a family. Les is definitely in there. Who else? Tool. Danny Elfman. There's this group of kind of like stop motion aficionados, especially in the 90s, that were somehow loyal to stop motion, loved it as an art form, enough to kind of patronize it. But, so yeah, of course, he directs a quick Les Claypool video. I think even Les projected Webster's video, like, on huge screens in some of his live concerts. I'm pretty sure I remember Webster telling me that. Anyway, the whole thing is so dope. Webster's just so fucking dope. And he's a machine. The dude does not quit. He's so hardworking. He's so focused. And he just cranks. And people respond to it. They're like, what else do you have? Because his work is undeniable. He's a force in nature. It's, it's well designed, it's well animated, it's well conceived, it's got great energy, and he's one of the greats. Webster Colcord, that's all I gotta say. I wish I had kind of like recorded this with more prep, because I feel ill-prepared to talk about Webster. I haven't seen Webster in a really long time, but I hear he's back at Tippett doing something very interesting right now. So I'm curious, because Tippett doesn't quit. I mean, here's a guy, Phil Tippett, Jesus Christ. Look at Mad God. I know Webb did a bunch of shots on that. Mad God is sumptuous, scrumptious, over the top, high art filmmaking. You know, it's akin to deep philosophical alchemy. It gets into, I mean, the pacing of that film, the soundtrack, the way it's lit, composed, conceived, and animated, it's like you're entering a labyrinth of nightmares. You know, there's so many sequences that are so jaw-dropping in their scope and execution. It is one of those, like, they were not fucking around films. And I really, my hat is off to everyone involved with that film. You know, however you feel about Mad God, I urge you to watch it again and again and again. I watched it, I think I've seen it about 5 times. And when it was in the theater, I saw it 3 times back to back. I had to keep going back because there was so much in there to kind of look at and analyze and consider. It's very special. And of course Webster's involved. Of course. Why wouldn't he be? You know, he somehow lodged himself into that older generation because he was the young pup that... he's a nerd. He's a total nerd. In a good way. He understands stop motion on a level that is, he knows he can drop all the names. He knows all the people. He knows all the players. They know him. And he doesn't fuck around. He does the work. He can he can pick up a torch and fix an armature. He can slop together some mud and fucking build something out of found objects. He can lay a bit of paint or a design or a sculpt on something. He can fabricate with his hands something that is worthy of standing on stage and functioning. He's got a good sense of humor, and he's been around the block, and people know him. Webster Colcord is fucking badass, and I wish I worked with him more. I wish I knew him better. I wish I made more of an effort to just I don't know. I hang in a quiet corner of LA right now, and I kind of like it. I'm not gonna lie. I like being reclusive, and I like, it's not like I'm fading. It's that I like quiet. I like peace. I like contemplation. I like a small sphere of influence. I like playing in a puddle, a small little puddle, and watching the sun reflect off the water, and the way it enters your eyes and tickles your brain. The simple pleasures of stop motion satisfy me deeply, deeply, deeply. So I don't have one of those big voices that needs to be heard at all, whatsoever. I mean, the only reason I'm sort of recording these is because it's a chronicle for me. And I don't know, maybe it's of some value to somebody. But even if it's not, that's okay. It's some value to me to make these recollections and to celebrate people out loud, you know? People don't really talk about stop motion and celebrate stop motion in any reasonably fundamental way. They don't, it's not like a comedian, that puts out a special and all the rags have some opinion, something to say about the writing of the comedy special, and people comment and articles are written and global criticism has some sort of inflection point. It's like we're just farting in the wind. And these fucking farts take a long goddamn time. And they're painful. When they come out of your asshole, they're fucking painful. And you kind of want people to go, wow, a little onion, some salami, what are you eating, bro? You kind of want, it's weird. You want people to just go, wow, that was like a caustic. That really burned my nostrils, bro. Jesus Christ, are you okay? Are you taking some herbs? What's going on? You just want people to just at least notice and acknowledge that you fucking farted. But stop motion's it's like a fart in the wind. It's like you fucking put in all this effort, and culture and society have kind of moved on to the next thing. Like, oh yeah, I think I saw that. That's like a typical response to something. Oh yeah, I think I saw that video. Yeah, that was pretty cool. What are you working on now? It's like, do you know the fucking late nights and fucking blood, sweat, and tears I poured into that? And you're just gonna, in 2 sentences, say some trite shit about it? But we're so used to that treatment. And that's not why we do it. That's not why we fart. We don't fart to hear about how it smelled. We fart because we have to fart. I'm not going to drop this analogy because it's like primal shit, dude. If you're a stop motion animator and you have to make stop motion films, you have to. It's just in your DNA, you have to. It's part of the instruction manual that you came to this planet with. That's a glorious thing, but it's like you kind of feel sorry for that person because it's hard. It's really hard work. And it's kind of thankless. Toiling, laboring, working. I think about Phil Tippett, making that big fucking masterpiece. And, what kind of feedback did he get? Real critical feedback. I want to see a goddamn full-page Rolling Stone spread on that shit. I want to see, okay, great, we have another article on Pablo Picasso. Fucking, How about we fill that page space with a retrospective and a fucking deep dive into Mad God? You know, why don't we sit down with animator Webster Colcord and ask him, you know, what was it like working on Mad God? I mean, Jesus Christ, I should call him and interview him on this podcast. But, and that's not a complaint on modern culture. It's just like, this is the lane we live in, people. Just embrace it. You know? It's great. Every now and then you get kind of a pat on the head. But who fucking cares? It's not why we do it. We're not looking for a pat on the head. You know, we're too driven, independent, and focused to give a shit what mom and dad think. We're not doing it for them. We're not doing it for your, you know, your aunt who is estranged. We're doing it because we have to.